Chapter 3 Graybrook. The day wore on, and they traveled at a good pace. By midday they reached a break in the forest. At the head of their party, Vagelin and Hild drew to a halt. Beyond them, the road took a sharp turn north to follow the ridge of a high cliff. Below the cliffs lay a valley of misty shadows and tall, dark trees. From above the tree line, they could see the tops of trees showing the first yellow and orange signs of fall. Partly obscured by the trees and crags, and roughly at the center of the basin, was a keep of stone and wood. Gray clouds were reflected in the curling silver line of a river that meandered through the deep vale, made thin by distance. The river connected to a solitary body of water, a lake, in the northwest corner of the valley. It was all surrounded by either the tallest of hills or the lowest of mountains, save for one peak that rose above the rest in the far distance. "Graybrook," Vagelin declared. "Beautiful," Hild sighed. "Ominous," Bowen observed. And from behind the fen wagon where he rode beside Sparrow, Zaldivar called out, "What?" They followed a winding trail that brought them down the escarpment, the wheels of the fen wagon only inches from the precarious ledge. Hamish watched as pebbles scattered by the wagon wheels bounced over the edge. Patches of clouds passed overhead. Wind racked against them, bellowing cloaks, rustling horse manes, and kicking up dust that sparkled in the warm beams of sunlight, but stung the eyes. Soon they descended below the tree line, and the air cooled by a few degrees. The woods of Graybrook were a murky tangle of tall, hoary trees and thick, gnarled underbrush. The twisting road was marked by rock cairns and tall, mossy stones covered with old runes. Zaldivar changed Brune's bandages. The bruises showed signs of healing already. Thanks to a poultice, Zaldivar applied to the cloth. As Brune replaced his tunic, Zaldivar spoke to Hamish in a hushed tone. "This place is rife with eldritch power." "I know," said Hamish, and he snapped the reins to keep summer and autumn from veering off the trail. Vagelin led them at a steady gait, and soon their way passed through rolling pasture. They all drew a breath of relief at escaping the confines of that dark forest, save for Vagelin, who was at home there as the black-feathered ravens that cawed from high up in the boughs behind them. The forest closed back around them as they passed beyond the fields, and did not open up again until they reached the western gates of Graybrook, a little after midday. There were 2 guards, each bearing a sword and shield, and clad in the pale blue and ruddy brown livery of Graybrook. Their shields bore the crest of Graybrook, a blue stag on a field of brown, and they greeted Vagelin with much deference. The first guard, thicker of waist and graying at the temples, said, "Lady Vagelin, welcome home." The other guard, smaller and younger, grinned widely, and he bowed his head several times as he pushed the gate doors open. "Blessings," she said as she passed the men, a warm smile creasing the corners of her lips. The congeniality of the guards waned somewhat as they looked over the mercenaries. The older guard and Hamish met eyes and both nodded in a manly, stoic fashion. The younger guard turned his nose up and pretended to swat at an imaginary fly. Behind the wall, the road was better manicured. Rows of tall pines and trimmed hedges appeared. They turned a corner and the castle came into view. Lofty arrow slits peered down into the courtyard, and battlements lined the castle walls. At the heart of the place was a stately keep of ancient, weathered, gray-green stone. They followed Vagelin up to the raised portcullis, where she halted and dismounted. A castle guard took her reins, and she spoke to him with a gentle but authoritative tone. "We've an injured man. Summon Master Benarubius."
"Right away, my lady,"
the man said. He spun on his heels and sped off into the castle. Hamish was helping Brune down from the wagon bench, when a woman, mounted and armored in shimmering bronze chainmail, galloped up to them on a tawny charger. "Who are you?" she demanded loudly. Then she saw Vagelin, and her demeanor lightened. "Sister," she said, "you've returned." Vagelin stood proudly, holding the gaze of the newcomer. Hamish saw the family resemblance, but where Vagelin was smaller, darker of hair and lighter of skin, her sister was taller, darker of skin and lighter of hair, and she was perhaps a handful of years younger. Over her shoulder was slung an elaborately carved hunting bow, trimmed in bronze, with a matching quiver. "Ventessa," Vagelin said, and her smile was strained. A solitary gust of wind brushed through the air. "Where are you going?" "To find our father," the younger woman stated. Pine needles dragged across the flagstones in the wake of the breeze, and her tall horse bridled. "And what is this?" she asked, pointing her chin at Hamish and the rest. The sellswords. Vagelin took several steps toward her sister and assumed a worrisome posture. Then, why are you leaving? We have a plan. Ventessa glanced over the warriors, her bronze coif and dark blonde hair shimmering. They don't look like much. A grimace darkened Hild's face, but Hamish and his men were used to insults, and worse. You're going alone? Now there was pleading in Vagelin's voice, and she stepped closer, placing her hand on Ventessa's horse's armored forehead. The animal, showing familiarity, lowered its head affectionately. You worry too much, Vague, she said confidently, and patted the elegant bow. I have Elkhart. From where he stood in front of the others, Bowen interrupted. Elkhart, eh? Beautiful weapon. Ventessa looked in his direction, perturbedly. He looked back to where Hamish was supporting Brune by an arm. A devilish grin played across Bowen's handsome features. Brune rolled his eyes. Looking back at her, Bowen finished his remark. Beautiful like the lady who carries it. She blushed while repugnance danced over her winsome features. Her war-horse snorted as if he shared her sentiment. Turning her attention back to her sister, she spoke hotly. The king sent a regent. Arrived this morning. A snake of a man. You're the oldest, so he may listen to you, but my breath is wasted here. Vagelin stepped back from the horse. Ventessa, we had a plan. Ventessa dug her heels into the charger's flanks. The horse reared up, and like a bolt from a crossbow, she was gone. Hamish and Brune came up beside Bowen, as the sound of hooves on flagstones echoed away. Don't look so smitten, Bowen, Hamish said. I think I'm in love, Bowen declared. He rubbed the back of his neck, and he looked in the direction Ventessa had gone. A valet came up and took the reins of the fen wagon, ready to lead the horses to the stalls. Hamish hesitated, then called out to the man, Oats! Clean water and fresh hay! The valet paused, then bowed a shallow bow. A man appeared from within the castle, wizened and hunched. His long white beard was tucked into the belt that loosely gathered his threadbare robes of red, purple, and green, robes that must have once been courtly. Lady Vagelin, welcome home, he breathed cheerily. Benerubius, Vagelin nearly embraced the elder. This man is injured, she pointed at Brune. The sage peered up at Brune, squinting from beneath fluffy white eyebrows. And he has received some healing, I see, albeit by an unskilled hand. Zaldivar cocked his head. I beg your pardon? Vagelin said, Master Benerubius, these are the men I found to help us. Benerubius sucked his teeth. I assumed as much. Come now, bring him to me. Brune, supported by Hamish, walked up to the old master, who stuck a finger under the bandages and caught a glimpse of the bruised flesh beneath. I see. Yes, blue fiddlehead poultice. Zaldivar corrected him. And wood-ear caps. Primitive nonetheless, mumbled the elder as he looked over Brune's injuries. Zaldivar smirked, but bit his lips, and rested the desire to coil his fingers into fists. Benerubius continued, In any event, we'll have you right as rain in no time at all, lad. He patted the shoulder of the injured man, who groaned. Come now, he turned to lead them inside. Hamish passed the burden of Brune over to Bowen, and watched the brothers follow Benerubius as he tottered into the dim castle. I'll have one of my people show you to your accommodations, Vagelin said. After that, Hild, if you and Hamish would accompany me, I'd like to see what this regent has to say. Not long after that, Hamish and Hild followed Vagelin into the great hall of Graybrook Castle. The space was grand. Solid wood pillars stood between long tables of oak that lay in rows to the left and right of the large open area. Glass windows, set high in the stone walls, let light through in tapering rays. At the far end a great chair rested, not quite a throne, beneath a circular window and framed in elaborate carvings. The man who lounged in the great chair had long, straight, whitish hair and a pallid complexion. Covering his left eye was a black leather eye patch. One knee hung over an armrest. He paid them no heed as they came up to the dais upon which the chair sat. Said there were to be no more disturbances this day, the slender, pale man said, almost to himself. Around his neck was a silver chain. On it hung a bright red gem that he caressed. You're sitting in my father's chair, Vague's statement echoed slightly off the high ceiling, amplifying the subtle tremolo in her voice. The man's head-snap turned with feline speed. His one pinkish eye skittered between the three of them, and he frowned. "And here are the mercenaries." His voice was cold and low-pitched. He stood and took a graceful step toward them. The garments he wore, fine enough for the king's court, were lined in red stones that reflected light in patterns onto the walls and floor. From his hip a narrow silver-hilted blade hung, sheathed in red. Hamish rested his palm on the pommel of his own sheathed sword, its blackened steel less pretentious, yet equally lethal. "You may go from this place," Vagelin said as sternly as she could muster. The man took a few steps, turning as if to go round them. "The king of this land ordered this regency." Vagelin fought back the feeling that she was about to lose a gamble. She took a steadying breath, raised her chin, and cut him off. "The regency is no longer required." She hoped the tremble she felt was not apparent to the room. "I am the acting head of the house, and I am here. Where are the attendants, the servants?" She clapped her hands twice loudly. A side door creaked open, and the top of a grey-haired head peeked around it. "My lady?" The voice was thin and frightened. "Come to me, Farno," Vagelin implored, and a small, aged man in brown servant's apparel emerged. The servant gave the regent a wary glance as he moved across the room. "My lady, I'm afraid the regent's papers are quite clear." He came up to her, his hands grasping a letter with a broken royal seal. The white-haired regent made his way to the entrance of the great hall, as Farno explained. "The regent is only to step down in the event of your father's return." The regent leaned against the door frame and crossed his arms. Vagelin looked over the letter. It appeared to be an order. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "You may go," said the regent. She turned and left, with Hamish and Hild in tow. As Hamish passed him, the man leered. A scar that ran from the corner of the regent's thin mouth to his narrow chin writhed slightly with the gesture, and he stank of something terrible.